So hey everyone, I am Joydip, and I'm the head of products at Krux. And like Tom and Vivek, I'm going to take a very short ride on my Wayback Machine, real quick. Kind of explains the recurring theme about how we all ended up here. So back in 2010, when Tom and Vivek were cooking up Krux, I was behind bars of a software enterprise company. And, but I was agitating. And I came up, I dug up a couple of artifacts from that time that I'd like to share with you. So this is an actual slide that I presented to the board, and we had this big idea. I really didn't like enterprise software much. So the idea was stop writing crappy software that basically keeps records and produces charts, which is kind of in my mind what a lot of enterprise software did and still does. And instead, start writing software that actually helps people. Because the notion was, in 2010, we were all using mobile phones, we were all on the internet. I was on the internet since, I think, early 90s. And my sense was that we are producing so much content, right? You and I, we produce tons and tons of content. We are interacting a million times, and it's getting bigger and bigger every day. So software should be using all of that stuff very intelligently to give us what we need when we need it, help us to live smarter, just make smarter decisions about everything, and just be happier with the way we do things. So it was kind of creeping people out. So we talked about enterprise software guys. They were pretty stuffy about all this. We talked about collecting. We talked about analyzing. We talked about enriching. Different words, but you see how these concepts keep coming back. And to manage the creepiness, we also came up with this. And I haven't changed any of the words in this slide. So we used to call it person-centric. But if you think about it, this is people data. So we had the 3 laws of people data. And if you know your Isaac Asimov and the laws of robotics, you can recognize where we were going with this. And in my mind, some of these laws still apply to all the governance stuff that we bake into everything we do at Krux. When I think about where we are today, we had 20,000 engineers in my previous company. We still never really cracked people data. And here we are at Krux in 2016. It's a very, very different world. And when I think about you, many of you have met our solutions teams and our market-facing teams, and you know how good they are. And I'll tell you what I think about the engineering and product team that we have at Krux. So everyone uses their own analogies, and I'm a very avid outdoor enthusiast. I think I'm segment P367K something on Pandora in the Krux system. And so I'm going to use an outdoor analogy. So when I think about the product engineering team at Krux, we're like a bunch of best of the best mountain guides. We're like the Sherpas. We have the best technology at our fingertips, years and years of experience, cracking really difficult problems. We set up the ropes and the ladders and make sure that you guys get to the summit and come back safely. And we do it day in and day out. And so we're not hanging around at Krux in the engineering lab around the campfires, roasting s'mores, doing the same thing that everybody else in the industry is doing. We're always trying to find new ways to solve problems and solve different types of problems. And when we think about the Intelligent Marketing Hub that Tom and Vivek talked about, there are a lot of cool mountains that we hang out. It's a landscape that we love being in. And there's many mountains to climb, and we're always chasing new ideas. I would love to spend the rest of the day today and tomorrow talking about this. Ben, can I do that? He's probably going to have a heart attack if I say that. So I have 10 minutes, so I'm going to quickly hone in on a few of these. First thing I'm going to do is shamelessly plug some product sessions that are coming up later today and tomorrow. So first up, a little bit later today, we're going to talk about something that we have codenamed Clever. It's an internal code name. Don't worry, we're not trying to introduce a new product on stage here, but this is important. This is the user experience of what we now call the Intelligent Marketing Hub. And if you've been in the industry as long as I have, you know there's a lot of point products out there. And you try and use them and you string them all together, or if you're a large incumbent, you try and acquire them and create a Frankenstein user experience. That's not going to happen at Krux. We're going to give you an user experience around the whole marketing hub concept that's absolutely intuitive and delightful. I'm not going to reveal too much now, but Raji Bedi, who you might remember if you were here last year, was on stage talking as a client. He's going to come back later, a little bit later this afternoon, and blow your minds with what we're planning with Clever. And by the way, he felt very strongly about this, so he joined the team. And if any of you feel the same way, you can talk to me outside later. Can I say that? Probably not.
You're not supposed to.
Okay, moving right along. The next thing I'll talk about tomorrow is this whole idea of sense-making and productizing that sense-making capability for you. So we are introducing a workbench product where we have included two types of discovery problems. And Vivek alluded to this a little bit. Things like if you want to find what characteristics of a population really stand out so that you can take some action, we help you do that. And the other side of the coin is finding patterns of many, many features and attributes that you may or may not be able to see with the naked eye. So we'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow. And later in the afternoon tomorrow, we're going to talk about how we continue to expand the publisher toolkit in our system. Vivek alluded to this again a little bit. We provide you with an ad blocking intelligence solution, which provides you a lot of information about how who the ad blockers are, and essentially gives you a chance to try to engage them and regain their trust. And as a part of that engagement, we have a content recommendation solution where you use all of this data that we collect on your behalf to actually give an engaging experience and recommendations that keeps those users on your sites. So Justin Davis is going to talk about that a little bit tomorrow. All right, please don't miss those sessions. So now I'm going to pick up where Vivek kind of set me up a little bit about attribution and completeness and stuff. So Vivek talked about the technology around completeness and identity. I'm going to start off going back to people. We think about people a lot. So very quickly, setting the ground rules. When you think about people, the reason we care about identity is because first-gen DMPs live there. And this is a legacy of the way CRM systems used to collect records. They have object models where you put name, address, and phone number and what they bought. And so we added a couple of structured pieces of data to it. We live in a world where there's a lot of unstructured data. So the identities that we collect from all the different devices, Internet of Things, et cetera, this is the world we want to live in. And the reason we want to do that is because people are incredibly complex. If you're not doing this, you're not going to know somebody who is 24 years old, loves yoga, loves scotch, is an avid gardener, rides her Harley to her investment firm every day, does 3 mixed martial arts classes during the week. I know somebody who's kind of like that, and my fear is my 14-year-old daughter is growing up to be exactly like that. And there is no way you're going to pick her up if you just stick to age and technographic data. The other thing that we care about a lot is journeys. So people are very whimsical, people are irrational, people don't do what you expect them to do. So if you're looking at what they've done in little microcosms, you are going to miss a whole bunch of other stuff they did. This is why we'll end up with last click as the most obvious solution to attribution because, hey, we know what they did, right? And this is a problem that needs to be resolved. And I think we are set up in our technology and infrastructure to solve this problem. So I'm going to dig into this a little bit and kind of explain to you how we think about it. Can I have a raise of hands? How many data scientists in the room? Please raise your hand. 1, 2. This is awesome. So you guys are absolutely freaking awesome, okay? Because the reason we do data matters is because you make it matter. But for the next 10 minutes, I beg your forgiveness because I'm going to simplify the heck out of everything you do. So you guys a couple of you guys can go and crunch some numbers or something, right? I'm with the rest of you guys. I'm not a data scientist, but I work with them day in and day out. And I've started to talk about this thing called datanese. Datanese is a new language which we all have to learn to speak in this information age. I joke about how it's really important in cocktail parties to be able to slip in some of these words. Market basket analysis, frequent pattern mining. I'm going to teach you a couple more, okay? So this whole idea of getting journeys right is all about granular data. And what happens if you don't have that granular data is something called Simpson's paradox. You can write that down, Simpson's paradox. It happens a lot in everyday life. We make all kinds of, we create all kinds of insights and make all kinds of judgments about things that are completely mired in observational bias because we have small pieces of fact. But when you look at the granular data in detail, what you find is that the results that come out of that are very different to the aggregate data that you looked at. A simple example, and you can find many of these on the internet. You can look it up, Simpson's paradox. Batting averages of player A and B over 5 seasons. Player A looks like he has the better batting average. But if you look at every season individually, you find that player B has a better batting average. And it has a lot to do with how many games they played, et cetera, all the other data that goes into the granular pieces. So that's the problem we're going to try and solve. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we organize all of this in the Krux system. So we keep talking about completeness, and next time you're around a data scientist and you want to impress somebody who pays your salary, you need to draw a table. Because basically, completeness is all about rows and columns. The rows of completeness are all the events that we can capture. Okay? And I'll tell you in a second why we need to capture these. And the columns are all of the features of that event. Vivek talked about how you have to not ask questions earlier, because if you ask a question first, then you already decide which rows and columns you're going to deal with. If you don't, you end up collecting everything, and here is why. If you think about something that's a conversion event, it's a rare event. It doesn't actually happen very often in all of the other events that happen. So here's another Daytonese term. It's a black swan event. So drop that in a conversation. Okay? Conversion events are black swan events. They don't happen very often. But if you have every event collected, the chances are you have picked up the conversion event that matters most. You may not know what it is yet, but you've picked it up. And if you have all the columns filled out, then you know as much as you can possibly know about that person and what they did. All right? So makes sense? You can draw this table. It's very simple. All well and good. Then what we do is we take this table. Oh, by the way, this is the n equals all that Tom talks about. Had to make that obvious. So identity. In all of this data, there is a notion of identity buried. So what you do next is you start pulling that little identity thread out, right? So now you have organized all of this information that you had about a person around that identity, and you know all the events and all the attributes and all the features of that person and what they did. What you have essentially solved is a journey problem, because you can easily now organize all of these in a time sequence. With me, everyone? So this is easy data science. You can sound very, very data sciencey with this stuff. But all you have done so far, our data science friends will tell you, is you've done some linear algebra. You've just organized a table in a couple of different ways. Great. This is where the frequent pattern analysis and frequent pattern mining comes in. And this is when you buy these guys a drink, because this is hard stuff. So let me give you an example of how this kind of played out. We recently had an automotive client of ours who came with an interesting problem. They wanted to find out what drove a particular conversion event. In their case, the conversion event was how to get somebody to a test drive. It's not how to get someone to buy a car. They knew very, very well what happens when someone came to a test drive and then how they could take that person to the car. What they needed to find out was how do you get people to a test drive? So they had about 40 different events that they wanted to track in their funnel, different ad campaigns, different channels, different brochures, all kinds of stuff. So we had 40 different events that we were looking into. And for all of those events, we were looking at approximately 40 different attributes, because they had different types of people. They had a notion of different types of people who buy cars. There are the age and the demographic data. There is people who are first-time car buyers, lifelong car buyers, young car buyers, etc. So 40 different attributes. So think about that. That's a 40 by 40 matrix in that table I just had, right? 40 rows, 40 columns. You take 1 million of these users, and then you look at the conversion event that we're interested in. Black swans, only 1,000 of them came to the test drive. Great. So you start to do the frequent pattern analysis. And what's happening now is you're trying to find all the possible combinations, all the possible ways you can attribute a conversion lift to all those interactions you were tracking. And it turns out that the number of combinations there is a number with 21 zeros behind it. And we did a back of the napkin calculation that's roughly about how many stars we think there are in the visible universe. 10 billion galaxies, 100 billion stars per galaxy. Okay? Now you really want to buy these guys a drink, because this is what these guys do day in and day out. So the results of this analysis with our automotive client was very interesting. They found a couple of different things that drove a conversion lift, almost double conversion lift, which were not the traditional things that they were used to. The results are not important here, but the idea of how frequent pattern analysis leads to that is. The other interesting thing they found is they had two very distinct personas in the feature set that they were collecting about their users. There was one set who were completely engrossed in the technical details of the car. They were downloading specs. I figured these are all the left-brainers. All the engineers, like our data science friends, what I kind of used to be one day, Vivek, etc. And the other lot are kind of more like my older daughter, only interested in aesthetics. And it's interesting because you think these are intuitive, but what they found is how distinct these things are. So anyway, the results are not that important. What's important is the kind of intelligence you get out of it. So what we have done so far is we have taken personal profiles, we have taken personal journeys, we have done the journey patterns and analysis, and we have started to uncover what we think of as cognition, right? You've gone from some linear algebra to real intelligence. But when you think about attribution, right? Attribution is almost like half a step back and 2 steps forward from here. Because with attribution, you're not asking what drove this conversion event. You're actually asking different types of questions now. You're taking all of the patterns that you can generate and all of the learnings for every journey, and you're asking questions like, how am I going to allocate my budget? That's one end of the spectrum. And the other end of the spectrum, you're asking, what am I going to show this person who is just on my site right now? If I know that they're the left-brainers, do I give them the specs to download? I mean, that's the kind of decisioning and tactical stuff you can do when you have the attribution piece solved. So in the lab right now, this is where our heads are at. We think that completeness, the n equals all concept, the cognitive machinery that we have built, the sense making we have done, for us, the idea of attribution is not just something, I think it's the next thing we should do. But of course, it's a natural evolution of where the marketing hub is going. So I know I have a light flashing which tells me I'm way over time and I'm going to get kicked off very soon. So what I'll do though is finish up with an invitation for you guys to come and talk to us more about some of these ideas. And I would like you to meet the mugs of the incredibly good-looking Sherpas that form the product and engineering team at Krux. And they're all here except for Rachel. We're all congregating around in the networking area after the sessions are over today. Come and talk to us, get engaged, give us your ideas, because we innovate the best when you guys work with us. So let's talk. And Vivek, we have
yeah, there's one more thing that we'd like to share with you. We've always been the kind of company that puts out its engineers directly in front of people such as yourselves. And we actually have in San Francisco our entire engineering team They're geographically distributed, so all of them are in San Francisco right now. There's a hackathon going on. So I'm going to try and Skype them in right now and give you a taste for some of the things that they're working on. So bear with me just for a minute as I dial them in.
So hopefully we'll get to meet Arijit, Vivek. Arijit is one of our junior engineers, and I tease him mercilessly as the intern. He'll forever be the intern at Krux. But I'm extremely envious of him, because if I was half as good as him when I was his age, I think I would have been much more successful as an engineer.
So there they are.
So Arijit is the guy in the gray shirt, right there.
That's Arijit and Josh, two of our engineers. Josh, why don't you tell the audience what you're working on right now at the hackathon?
Hi, Josh. I've worked at Krux going on 3 years now. Focused on data activation and ingestion. In my team, the Keystone Cops and I are working on a solution that'll allow you to drop a tag on the page that'll expose a JavaScript API to identity. We're excited about this because it'll lower the barrier for users to log into more sites and also to share declared data across sites seamlessly.
Great. So as you heard, this is our overall commitment to building more robust identity solutions. So there's something being hacked. I don't know what the beauty of this is. I have no idea what these guys are working on. So next week when I go back, all will be revealed, and I'm looking forward to it. So Arijit, why don't you tell the audience what you're working on?
Hello everyone. I'm Arijit. I started at Krux as an intern, where I enjoyed solving big data problems. After graduation, I joined Krux as a software engineer to mostly work on the data processing bit. Our team, Corvus, is building an intelligent and fault-tolerant job scheduling system using Apache Mesos, Chronos, and Amazon Web Services. This will help in efficient resource isolation as well as workload distribution across our global infrastructure for applications like Hadoop and Spark. This will also optimize the reliability of running data processing jobs around our infrastructure.
Great, thank you guys.
So can I say
yes,
this?
Yes, Joydip.
Arijit, get back to work.
So yeah.
He's awesome. He is just awesome, but don't tell anybody that I said that.
We like to make fun of Arijit a lot. He was the first intern. We started getting interns into the company 2 years ago, 3 years ago actually, and Arijit was the first intern that we had. And to this day, he's still referred to as the intern. So thank you for indulging us. It's been great. As Joydip said, we're all hanging out by the product pop-ups. Please put us to work. Come learn more. There's lots to share, which we couldn't go into today, but we're looking forward to all of it. Thank you.
Should we do some QA?
Thank you, Chairman.